Thank you so much. Flying over the ocean, across many lands, only to land here, in a foreign place to call home. In a suitcase filled with clothes, the essentials, a bit of anxiety, a silent prayer, a lot of love, but also a ton of pressure and expectations. This is what the first immigrant generation brought with us. That's our parents. They planted the seed, they grew their roots, they grew their family, and all they wanted to do was protect their children. They wanted to make sure that their children have a better life than what they did, which is a standard wish for many parents. It's not unusual. They have so much expectation and they want to do so well. And they want to make sure that their children do just as well, but they want to control that. So then, amidst all of this, like maybe, let's say, fear, they build up a new parenting style. And it's the only parenting style that they know will help their children. It's called emotional parental blackmail. It sounds like a taboo subject, right? And well, maybe I've let the cat out of the bag. But I'm pretty sure a lot of parents know this technique. And I'm also quite sure that they might have sat together at some point to share strategies. For Indian parents, I feel like this is a hand-me-down. It's something that they're taught. Who knows? So while the words are heavy, the process doesn't have to be. Growing up here, in this generation, we are taught to be free individual thinkers. We're taught that you come up with conclusions based on research, by taking experiences, having your own experiences, and learning from other people, listening to other people, and taking their perspective into account. But you see, in an Asian culture, and I can speak of the Indian culture, the society is structured in a way of community. People exist and operate for the benefit of the wider collective interest group. The foundation of learning is inherited and therefore transferred down generations, because it preserves the premise of a collective group living. So, for the first immigrant generation, they're stepping into a new environment, which is totally different from what they grew up with. They're faced with immense pressures, well, also from the earlier generation of what they've left back home, but also their own expectations and what goals that they've set aside for themselves. They seek to prevent any kind of distractions or deviations from their own goals. They want to make sure, like I said, that their children succeed, the next generation. They're in a new environment, they can't control all the elements, and they grasp onto everything that they can, all that power and that control. But it's out of their hands. So then what do they turn to? To make sure that their kids listen to them, that their kids don't get distracted by X, Y, and Z that they don't know about? Emotional parental blackmail. Now, you might be confused, and I see some of you are, and that's okay. Let me give you an example. Now, when I was growing up, my mother told me that she knew everything about me. She would know things even if she wasn't physically there. She even convinced me that she could read my mind. She had psychic abilities. These are supernatural powers. Now you must be thinking, how gullible is this girl? And I don't blame you, but you don't understand. She knew things that only my friend and I would whisper at the back of the car. We were whispering. She couldn't have known. She knew things that all these top secret class information that we only wrote down in the back of our notebooks. She knew it all. And just having that example in front of me, I can say it stopped me from having so many life experiences. Do you know, I never climbed a tree because she told me I would then fall and break my head. I never even jumped into the stream next to my house because she told me I would fall and break my head. I've never gone bungee jumping because I would fall and break my head. Do you see a pattern here? So yeah, it was fear manipulation which is led also, I like to believe, with a bit of personal convenience. I remember I was about 15 years old, and we were going to have the first house party. One of the kids in my class, also a family friend, he was hosting a house party for the grade, and there was rumors that there was going to be alcohol. And conveniently, that weekend, I was on antibiotics. So then what did my mom tell me? If you take one sip of alcohol, you can land up in hospital, and you could die. You could bet your ass I did not even smell alcohol that night. So now, of course, this had such a big impact on me, and it left me, let's say, it stirred me into taking certain life decisions. My brother, however, who's 7 years younger, that conversation was somewhat different when she tried to cast her spell. Mama, do you know what happened in class today with my friend Tommy? Yeah, I heard. Very bad. Very, very bad. Oh, really? What happened then? Tell me. Yeah, I know everything. And obviously, Tommy's in so much trouble. Oh my God, the teacher is very angry. His mother's going to get a letter. Oh, I don't even want to think of the consequences. It's terrible. That's very interesting, Mama. Tommy was sick today, so he didn't come to school. In that moment, the spell was broken. The power dynamic completely changed. Well, the power dynamic definitely between my brother and my mother, but also between my mother and I. All of a sudden, we started having more open dialogues, conversations about topics that were relevant to me. I would get her insights and she would get mine, and the two of us would now have two sides of a coin to talk about. It wasn't just one perspective. Over time, my family also started chipping in, so the rest of them would bring their opinions as well, and it was great. We were all sharing. What was even more beautiful is that my parents started sharing. So now, instead of all of us just having maybe two sides of a coin to think of and consider, we had 4 individual points of view. And while they were just points of view, the decision ultimately lies with me. Now, like I said, it was beautiful because my parents started sharing too. This empowered me to have a sneak peek into what adulthood would be like. But it also made them a lot more humane, a lot more human, and it also made them vulnerable. It made me somewhat savvy, and for them, it broadened their horizons, because all of a sudden they were getting opinions and feedback from 2 different generations, which eventually led to a smaller generational gap between all of us. Obviously, this transition was gradual, but at least there was no more secret mind games, but more, open and frequent conversation that we're having. And looking back, I can of course recognize the times when it would just be them giving guidance to steer me in the right direction, and when it would also just be an opinion. To this day, we do almost the same kind of exercise. Now let's fast forward 20 years. Emotional parental blackmail can be a lot more toxic than what I went through. The reality is that my mother was looking for a way to keep us safe. She was looking for a way to, keep a tab on us, to make sure that we made the right life decisions. And I don't blame her, because maybe it's the way that she was parented. And like I said, the Asian culture is that one of a community. So my parents' failures most probably are not lessons learned, but instead they would be a family failure or a letdown. Whereas here in a libertarian society, your failures and your mistakes are points of teachings. That's your moment to evolve and grow as a person. They're not your mistakes that you should be ashamed of. They're something that you should be proud of, because at that point you made a decision and now you can reflect on why and look at the results. And you can always grow from them. While there are enough examples around me where parental emotional blackmail has resulted into more toxic family relationships and had an adverse effect, I can say that I steered away from making so many wrong decisions just so I didn't have to deal with the consequences. And maybe pretending to be a psychic mind reader and having these supernatural powers might not be the worst parental tactic, and I could also consider implementing them for when I raise children. I know that I would stay away from the toxic traits that some parents do adopt. The manipulation, for example. So, like I said, I credit much of the time the change of my parents' parenting style to my brother. But let's be honest, the reality is that we were just growing up. We were maturing, and therefore that's why the dynamics was also changing so much. But I have to also give credit to my parents. They were growing up. They were evolving. They were adapting to their new environment. They were adopting a libertarian way of thinking. They were learning from their mistakes. They wanted a better and healthier relationship with their children, so they changed their style. We have a very healthy relationship because, in fact, it was my mother who brought this topic to me to discuss with you all here today. So, parental blackmail, it works, but only until you're reading their minds. Thank you.